thanks for joining in. This video is about the offshore passage we did last February with Jerome Rand from Sailing into Oblivion. We had already trained with Jerome the year before, and we invited him back as crew to help us do a 6-day circumnavigation of Grand Bahama Island and Little Bahama Bank. In the weeks leading up to the trip, we were looking at the marine and wind forecast daily, trying to find a solid 7-day window of decent weather. The sailing weather in our region was rough last year as one low-pressure system after another rolled off the eastern seaboard. We finally locked in on a week in February, and when I picked Jerome up at the airport, he was all smiles. Friends who were on the jetty snapped a picture of us as we left the inlet. Jerome went right to work, tuning the rig and giving Montana a thorough assessment. We headed south with a light east wind on our beam and 3 to 4 foot seas. After a few hours, the wind picked up, and soon we were able to fly all 3 sails with the hydrovane engaged. The boat was happy, and so were we. Crossing the Gulf Stream went fairly quickly and without difficulty. Jerome had a lot of information to share, and we thoroughly enjoyed having him on board. His stories were entertaining and informative, and his relaxed nature helped to put us at ease. As the first day drew to a close, we prepared for our first night at watch. The rotation of 3 hours on and 6 hours off meant we each had time to get sufficient rest and nutrition. The sunset behind us in the Gulf was beautiful, and our moods and spirits were high as the first day drew to a close. The sunrise on day 2 was equally inspiring, and as the day unfolded, the south winds picked up to a steady 15 to 20 knots. There was a persistent easterly swell, and the big rounded bow of our West Sail 32 began to heave as it met the 4 to 5 foot waves. At this point, we were about 30 miles north of Grand Bahama Island, and planned to go as far as east as needed before heading south towards the Abacos. We knew the wind was predicted to shift to the west by day 4, and we had no choice but to endure the tough conditions while we sailed as close to the wind as possible. By day 3, we were all beginning to feel the effects of the rough conditions. Jerome stayed up in the cockpit with Steph during her shift the night before, as we encountered some of the wildest conditions so far. I went above deck quite often as we reefed and unreefed the mainsail several times. Jerome gave us the guidance we needed to manage the 25 to 28 knot winds and the 8 to 10 foot seas. We actually jibed at one point so we could run with the swell and find some relief for a few hours. By the morning of the 4th day, we got the wind shift we were hoping for. Along with the 12 to 15 knot west winds came a drop in temperature and some squally weather. The seas quieted down within a few hours, and we all felt a sense of relief. At this point, we were east of the Abacos and were able to round the island and begin our westward trek back towards Florida later that evening. The wind, though light, shifted to the east and pushed us along like a freight train on rails. Day 5 felt like the reward we needed after the challenges of the previous few days. The boat rode flat, and we were able to rest and recover in the mild seas and warm temps. At this point, we were a solid team, getting along well and enjoying what felt like perfect sailing in perfect conditions. The evening sky was incredible as sunset approached and painted the horizon with the shifting shades of brilliant orange. By 2 a.m., we had rounded the island and decided to drop anchor in Cross Bay by West End. We all got a few hours of sleep before enjoying coffee on deck the following morning. Steph was adamant that we drop the hook somewhere in the Bahamas, and this was the perfect location as we prepared for the final leg back to Fort Pierce. It took us 14 hours to reach the inlet, and we tied up to our slip at 2 a.m. Jerome did a podcast with us the following morning, and I provided a link in the description below. In all, the voyage went as planned, and Steph and I finally got the offshore experience we had been looking for. Thanks again for tuning in.